Call your sponsor. Call your sponsor. Call your sponsor. Call you.
Bitch, call your sponsor.
Call.
Hello and welcome back to Bitch Call Your Sponsor. I'm Sam.
And I'm Misty.
Hi, Misty. Shall we do our primary purpose?
Let's do it.
Our primary purpose
is for Misty and Sam to grow their friendship and maybe help others. Maybe.
So every spiritual practice has its own sense of, being honest, confession, repentance for sins and or past misgivings. And what I've brought to us today is this thing called the 4 Agreements. There are only 4, and they totally align with our steps. And I thought it would be fun to just kind of bring them here and have a conversation about it. So the 4 agreements are: 1 is be impeccable with your word. 2 is don't take anything personally. 3 is don't make assumptions. And 4 is always do your best. And I think the one that I think in early recovery, it was like taking things personally was like a big thing. And then as I stick around, I think the one that keeps surfacing for me is this like noticing the assumption loop of like, whatever, ass out of you and me, whatever. Like my brain always likes to kind of fill in the story that I find convenient, which may or may not necessarily be happening. Thoughts?
Can you put the 4 agreements in the chat?
Yeah, totally.
My brain will not let me remember, not even one of them. Like, it's like, yep, I heard Sam say them, and now they're gone.
Yeah, I'm going to text you. Is there a chat on this thing?
Yeah, it's like a little script thing. I don't know if you see it. Maybe only I see it.
Well, I'm going to send it to you.
Do that, please.
Right now. God, I love technology. It's just so, what did we do before? I think they used to say the long timers would be like, who's your dime? Because it was a dime when they were around, to make a phone call. There wasn't cell phone service. So they're like, who's your dime?
I remember that Jay Leno had, he would do these like funny news clipping or funny things that you can buy on the Tonight Show. At the end, he would show him. And one of the funny things they all laughed about so hard was something where you would record into a phone and text message of what you were going to say would come to the other person. And they were all laughing so hard, like, why would you just not call a person? Why would you ever text something to a person, And here we are.
And we are.
Okay, so be impeccable with your word. Number 1. Okay, this has been a struggle my whole entire life. Like, Nikki was pretty much like, hey, listen, like, whatever you do, don't tell the truth. That's the way you get through life. And I was like, okay, got it, And then it says, don't take anything personally. Not a good deal when you're being raised by the Karen of all Karens, who anytime something went wrong, we called Southwestern Belle and she was a squeaky wheel and she got her way, So take everything personally and you fight every fight. Let's see. Don't make assumptions. We would drive around town and she would go, is that woman fatter than me? And I would be like, I know the answer I have to say is yes. But all we do is drive around town. She's like, ooh, can you believe she's wearing those earrings? We just assume everything about everybody and judge them. Always do your best. Always do what you can get by with. So those were what I grew up with. And I remember seeing those 4 agreements thinking, well, they're impossible. I didn't learn those things sayonara?
It's interesting because what I've done is I've kind of like aligned them like in my brain. I'm like, oh well, like impeccable with your word is like being honest, which is 1, 5, and 10 ultimately for me. And the personal thing is like, it's like 3, 8, and 9 in essence, because it's like I what happens for me as I work this program, it's happened, it's still happening. It's like I'm not rendered white as snow. Is that I'm not necessarily taking the bait because I don't, and I'm not making it about me. Like we've discussed in another episode of, the person that's tailgating me is not tailgating me. The person that has an issue with my drinking is telling me about them and it's not about me, and so that filter that I look through the world shifts when I'm aligned with something. And then the assumptions for me is like my thoughts, like I used to think everything I thought was 100, and it's never really been 100, although sometimes I could find my thoughts being very seductive, and then acting out a whole nother narrative with them. And then the doing my best is like, I think, for me, it's always kind of been minimum effort, maximum results.
Wait, it's always been about what?
Minimum effort, maximum results.
Yes, preach.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So yeah, I wish I had other things to talk about this. Maybe we should find something else to talk about.
Well, I mean, I would say, like, how do you think these align with the steps, and why are they important?
Well, I think, like, it's kind of, I think what I just shared is, the impeccability is being honest, right? Which is 1, 5, and 10. I admit to my innermost self in 1 that I'm an alcoholic. In 5, I admit to God, to myself, and another human being, the exact nature of how I'm operating in the world. And then 10 is I continue to admit when I'm wrong. The most important question for me in 10 is there something I've kept to myself, which I should share with somebody? Because like as I stick around, I think like, I don't know, it's I got this. I don't need it.
And do you think that everyone in recovery needs to read the 4 agreements? Do you think they add to the 12 steps?
I think it gives, for me, I remember reading it on a retreat and I thought they were very simplistic, but then as I, have reintroduced them into my life, it's like they can be really profound. I think what happened for me was that it gave me a different lens to look through a spiritual path, right? Like we have 12 steps that are very specific. I think that these 4 agreements definitely over like they what do I want to say? Intersect. Yeah. With, because I think every spiritual practice is pretty much the same. Like to a certain extent, there's this thing of like, there's a service thing. When I used to go to the monastery, everyone was there to do service. Everyone was seeking inside, getting in touch with their inner guide. Like I think like all of these spiritual practices, whatever it is, if it's not a cult, is usually has the same evidence. Even Catholicism, right? Like there was an essence of confession, which is our 4 and 5, like taking, addressing and sharing, albeit the priest never shared back his shit with me, like as a sponsor, or my sponsor will share stuff back with me for identification purposes, and perspective. Yeah. And then the, restitution of, apology or paying back or amend, repair, every spiritual thing that I've done pretty much has all of these same things as part of it.
You know what happens to me, I'm realizing, and this is good to look at, is that my ego comes up. I mean, and just like you were talking about how you grew up in a home that was like, don't tell, don't talk about it, like that. that is still a hurdle for you because it was ingrained in there. It was one of your buttons, right?
Mhm.
And so it's the opposite for me, where it's like, you know, I was taught to see, like, just basically this stuff as being weak. So be impeccable with your word. Obviously, I get it. And the program has helped us so much. And I really love being impeccable with my word now, because when I was out there drinking and drugging and just even living in a life, it was even when I got sober, you know, honesty was never the policy in my home. And so it was so much work being dishonest and telling lies and fabrications and having to keep up with them and who did I tell what, and when they come back around and they ask me questions because everybody knows I'm lying and they're trying to catch me, and I had to keep making up stories, and it just, you know, it was a lot of work. So eventually when I got to the point where I was impeccable with my word, it was like, oh, this is so much easier. Why have I not been doing this so long? But then when it says like, don't take anything personally, it's like, well, there's certain things that are personal, and my ego just jumps up and wants to argue with it. And I'm talking about the 4 agreements, right? Like it just wants to argue with it, and then don't make assumptions. Well, my mind does. And then it says, always do your best. Well, I'm not always going to do my best, you know? Sometimes I'm not going to, and that has to be okay. And I just notice all this resistance to what I perceive as people trying to get good. And I get really irked by people feeling like they have to get good. And I feel like I'm on this mountaintop saying, you don't have to be good, just be authentic. And I know that's not what this is saying. So I'm just exploring these thoughts and noticing the resistance that comes up.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You know, because as you were sharing, I was thinking of this thing about impeccability with one's word and honesty, and this idea of integrity. And I think we spoke about this in another episode of like, you know, there used to be a time before we were born where people's word was their bond.
Right.
Right. When people said they were going to do something, it was implied like, yes, this is going to happen.
They shook hands in the agreement.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think like for me, like when I drill down for just that one agreement is like, yeah, like that is that disconnection from myself, that not honoring what I say is actually having me second guess. It's like that then for me ends up getting projected elsewhere. Like, can I trust these people? Because I can't even trust myself. You know, so like so it's for me, it's like just a spiritual thing of like everything I put out is what comes back in essence, you know. And so like the impeccability with my word, the having integrity, having the word is my bond, is still for me a very foreign concept. And to your point, it's like, yes, I see how some people can, you know, my perfectionist self would be like, oh yeah, these are not guidelines, these are the rules. And like, you know what I mean? Like, versus where like, no, these are like guideposts. Like this is, you know, these can be seen as something like to aim towards, you know, like, I guess it's
progress, not perfection.
Progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, another reason I love the impeccable one is because I can't tell you how many times I've been able to utilize since I have been working on being impeccable with my word, to a company that would have like this HR, you know, agreement that you sign off on that you're going to be honest, you know? It's like, it's so nice to be like, hey dudes, I'm not honest because HR tells me to be honest. I'm honest because that's the way I live my life. Like you guys could have me sign away this all day long. And guess what? 10 years ago, it wouldn't have mattered. I would still sign it, you know? But now I take pride in, I'll sign your stuff, but I'm not honest at this company for you. This is just how I like to live my life.
Call
your
your
sponsor.
sponsor.
Call you sponsor. Call you sponsor.
your
Call you
sponsor.
sponsor. Call you.
Bitch, call your sponsor.
Call your sponsor. Call.
Send
your
us an email with comments, questions, or concerns bcysponsor@gmail.com.
Don't forget to rate 5 stars.